December 18th, 2018 meeting of the Colerain Township Zoning Commission will come to order. Would you all please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next on my agenda, would everybody please silence their cell phone. Could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Faring? Here. Mr. Grody?
Here.
Mrs. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Westfall?
Here. We need to seat Mr. Oh, you called him. Did he call you? We need to reseat you. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes for the November 20th, 2018 meeting. Does anybody have any changes or corrections or additions?
Make a motion they be approved as submitted to us.
I have a motion. Do we have a second?
Seconded.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the minutes of the November 20th, 2018 meeting. Could we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Faring?
Yes.
Mr. Grody?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Gehring?
Yes.
Mr. Westfall?
Aye. We have no, now the next section of this is the public address section. If anybody has anything they would like to bring before the commission that is not on the agenda, this is the time to do it. None so appearing, we will go on. Next on the agenda is a public hearing for case number ZA8 1988/ZA 2016-09, a major amendment to a preliminary development plan for 10-270 Colerain Avenue. That's the Speedway Station. Thank you on the presentation.
We do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before you this evening, your case number looks a little different. We're actually officially kind of opening up the boundaries of two separate planned districts. We're kind of creating a new parcel that crosses the boundary, so we're going to be moving that into just one of those. We're going to be moving that into the ZA 2016-09 Struble Road Development Plan development. The applicant this evening is Mr. Jonathan Wolker with McBride Dale Colerain on behalf of Speedway LLC. This is a major amendment to a preliminary development plan because of the boundary change for this property. The location is just north of 275 and the existing Colerain Town Center, south of Struble Road and east of Colerain Avenue. Just north of where the new AutoZone is currently under construction. The existing speedway is zoned as PDI, but it is included in it is currently included in the Colerain Town Center Plan District to the south, which is primarily Plan District business. It's kind of where your Walmart, Dick's, and several other stores are in that retail location. One thing I already forgot to mention in my presentation, Hamilton County Regional Planning Commission actually heard this development proposal on December 6th of this year and unanimously approved with 3 conditions. I'd be happy to read those for you. First condition, that all conditions approved as part of Colerain ZA 2016-09 shall remain in effect for the zone amendment area. 2, that the common open space plan in compliance with the zoning resolution shall be submitted as part of the final development plan. 3, that the site plan shall be revised to include the required 60 feet of right-of-way from the center line of Colerain Avenue in accordance with the Hamilton County Thoroughfare Plan. Our recommendation to you this evening will be somewhat similar to that. Quick aerial view of the Speedway site. This is looking northeast across the site. You can see the start of Generation Drive there. And we'll talk about that here in just a minute. That Generation Drive is associated with the Rumpke headquarters building that's currently under construction, as well as that 50-acre industrial park that is on its way to development at this time. This is just a Google Street view of the existing Speedway. taken from the access drive that's just north of Colerain Town Center. You can see that entrance into the existing speedway is from that access drive and not directly from Colerain Avenue. And then this is looking southeast on Colerain Avenue. This, where you see those road closed signs, is actually where Generation Drive now exists. This Google Street View is from, looks like August of this year. So before that roadway was paved, it is currently paved, and this access, the northern access on the existing speedway site, is now functioning. I was out this afternoon to take a couple pictures, and I don't know why, but this is actually the only picture I have of the building, so I apologize for that. I took everything around it, but not much of the building itself. This is entering from Generation Drive, looking south into the property. This is looking down Generation Drive towards where the truck fueling location is proposed to be. I'll get into the details of that here in just a second. This is pulling out, headed south out of the property onto the access drive north of the town center. This is looking east along that access drive, so this would be the southern boundary of the Speedway property. This is some of that, some of the buffer that we see between the town center and the Speedway property. This is looking west along that access drive, back towards the Speedway property. This is a pretty good shot of what that grade change might look like between the proposed retail facility and the commercial truck fueling station. And another shot of that, you can see the Rumpke headquarters building in the background there behind the dumpster enclosure. A little bit more of the history on this property. Was originally approved, this is the original approval of a PDP in 1988 for the Colerain Town Center Commerce Park. This included quite a bit of light industrial and office. What you'll see there, the bottom, the southern half of that site is closer to what's existing today with the retail center. The northern half did not come to development. The Speedway property is identified there. It was an outlot on this original 1988 approval. This original approval was for 94 acres. In 1994, we saw the final development plan approval for Speedway. Is essentially what is there today. You can see the proposed access roadway to the north of this site and how the proposed roadway curves around the site. That's actually why our property lines look the way that they do today, and one of the corrections that the applicant is attempting to make with their development proposal. This should look familiar to you. We saw this in 2016, 2017. This is the final development plan for the Struble Road industrial development. Subject property there, Speedway. The existing portion of that property is highlighted there in the red circle, and we're going to be talking about that space just to the east of it. So without further ado, in gray here is the Struble Business Park planned district, and then with the hashing is the Colerain Town Center. Then you can see that Speedway is proposing to redevelop on a portion that lies within each of those districts. Their proposal is to consolidate this into these two properties into a total of just over 3 acres between the two planned districts, and then redevelop the site. One item that I failed to note back here at the Rumpke PDP, and it's going to come into play with respect to staff's recommendation. The property just to the east of the Speedway expansion parcel is a property that the Colerain Township Fire Department has an option on until June 30th of 2027. They will be given up to 3 acres by Rumpke to develop a new fire station. Like I said, they have that option until 2027, middle of 2027. It's not exactly an industrial use like we would predict to see in this type of development. So we want to talk about how this speedway expansion plays along with that. The proposed development is to tear down the existing Speedway retail store and construct a 4,600 square foot retail store, single story, with a shingle pitched roof. The proposal is to include a small outside eating area on the southern side of the building, on the northern side of the building, as well as a dumpster enclosure. Proposal for 24 parking spaces, 8 fueling dispenser islands on the west side. Those are for your general automobile fueling customers, and then 3 commercial fueling lanes on the east side of the property, kind of down that hill on the grade change. And you'll see that there are a total of 4 access points to this site. The commercial fueling area is proposed to be somewhat separated from the regular fuel sales. That will have 2 access points along Generation Drive. It is proposed that that traffic would be one way, so one would be an entrance only, one would be an exit only, to facilitate traffic in that manner and keep it separated from the average automobile fueling needs. The other 2 access points then would be for your regular fueling needs and primarily for that retail store associated with the Speedway. There's an access point on Generation Drive that is currently existing, and then again that existing access point along the service drive for the Colerain Town Center to the south. The applicant is also proposing freestanding signage at the south driveway, which I believe is where that is currently located. The specifics of that signage is something that will be addressed in the final development plan approvals of this project. Again, the fire department does have the option for a new fire station over the next 10 years or so. I did speak with the 3 fire chiefs recently. They do have some concern about noise, dust, light pollution, that kind of thing for their fire station. And I apologize, I don't know why this screen, give me 1 second, I'll move this over for you. This screen doesn't project the same way. Hopefully you can see that better. Staff is recommending a landscape buffer along that eastern portion of the site. Obviously, both parcels are zoned as industrial, so there would not be a buffering requirement in the zoning resolution. But staff is recommending that we don't necessarily need to look for more distance over there. I want to say there's probably 10 or maybe 15 feet between the property line and where the pavement starts, but staff is looking to get some vegetative screening growth started along there so that if and when the fire department does exercise their option to develop the adjacent parcel, they could then add to the landscaping buffer on their own property. Staff's recommendation is for approval of the major modification to the preliminary development plan with the following conditions, I should say, that all conditions approved as part of case Colerain ZA 2016-09 shall remain in effect for the zone amendment area, that a common open space plan in compliance with the zoning resolution shall be submitted as part of the FDP, and this can be accomplished within the Struble Road Business Park. 3, that the site plan shall be revised to include the required 60 feet of right-of-way from the center line of Colerain Avenue in accordance with the Hamilton County Thoroughfare Plan. The streetscape landscaping will need to be adjusted to accommodate the additional right-of-way on the final development plan. That buffer landscaping be provided along the east property line in accordance with section 1452B of the zoning resolution. That signage submitted with the final development plan comply with the style of the Rumpke office buildings to the north. And 6, that the final development plan be submitted and approved by the zoning commission, addressing such issues as signage, buffering, landscaping, architectural design standards, et cetera. Staff would be happy to answer any questions the board might have at this time.
Mr. Grody?
Ms. LeCount, can you go back to the last color slide for the ones that are not color? That one? I don't know if you have your little laser thing with you. Is there really enough land from where that circle where it says subject property between there and the first proposed building in that development to get a fire station in there?
The option is for this parcel here, so to the east.
Okay,
This green area here, just east of the existing Speedway, so this area here is where Speedway is requesting this evening to expand into. So the fire department's option is then one more east.
okay. Okay, thank you.
Mrs. Smith?
My question is Generation Drive off of Struble or is it off of Colerain?
Both.
Both?
Both. It connects, at this point, it's not open, but it does connect from Colerain Avenue and then Struble on the north there. You can see it on this. This is the FDP for the Struble Road Development Company. There is proposed to be a new traffic light there at Generation Drive and Colerain Avenue.
Okay, my other question is probably about traffic.
And what's the question?
Will there be traffic jams? I'm sure, but to what extent?
Will there be, say it again, I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
I said, will there be traffic jams? And if so, to what extent?
The Hamilton County engineer is involved with the installation of the Hamilton County engineer and also ODOT, because that's 27's an ODOT road. So those engineers are involved with all those traffic counts and those studies and making sure that those signals are timed correctly.
But we don't have any response from ODOT at this time?
It should have been noted. I don't believe. Oh, no, we did not get a response from ODOT.
Okay, so in that situation, what do we do a traffic study, apply, or?
They've already done that. They're already planning to put that signalized intersection in there. So there wouldn't need to be another traffic study, as far as I understand it. It's already been done for the Struble Road Industrial Park, that 50 acres that's back to the east of all of this.
How many places or projects are going to be in that Struble Road development?
I think there was a total of 7 additional parcels. I would have to go back and look specifically at that, but I believe it was the Rumpke headquarters parcel, and then 7 others.
So does Rumpke own all the land that we're talking about?
At this time, I believe that they do.
Okay. That's the end of my questions for now.
Mr.
I don't have any questions.
Mr. Garing?
My questions have to do with Generation Drive. Who's developing Generation Drive? Who's actually putting that in?
I do not know. I mean, Struble Road Development Company's putting it in. They'll have to do it to county standards.
County standards?
And then it'll be, I believe that'll be dedicated to the township.
Okay, do we have any say in that process? My concern is that if they're going to put a commercial loading station as part of this down further on Generation Drive, then obviously that means we're going to have tractor trailers pulling back in there and then turning on Generation Drive to get in, turning to get out. And I don't want to make sure that we don't develop a road or capability for a road that we're going to have to maintain that's going to get torn up.
That's already been considered because the entire Struble Road development to the north here, that 50 acres, is for industrial development. So that's already been considered with the construction of the roadway.
Okay. And we don't take any part in what the standards are for those roads or anything like that?
Not as far as zoning, no.
Okay.
Does the applicant have a presentation they'd like to give, please?
Good evening. My name is Jonathan Walker. I'm a planner with McBride Colerain, represents Speedway on this application. Thank you for your time. I do have a hand up, which I'm going to give to you, and then I'll speak about that in a second. Just a couple of points that I want to follow up on. Ms. Count did a very thorough job. If possible, if you could go to the site plan. Speedway does have a development group, and so that would create a 3-acre parcel. Our driveways, the southern driveway, as was mentioned, we would access from the existing access road. There would be no new curb cuts on Colerain Avenue. The traffic study was done expecting this development to and they had planned to sell this to us for some time. So the traffic study for the signal was incorporated in our proposed development. I was up there today, the signal is in, and our understanding is that it will start flashing here in the next several days. And it should be fully operational. The road was built expecting this use as well, so we worked with Miller Valentine, who's the developer for the office building, and have shared their plans and actually coordinated the reconstruction of Speedway's existing drive. So we've been in close coordination with them. They're a seller to us, so they've seen our plans. So we have coordinated with them about the proposed driveway. The way this project will work, and Mrs. Powell mentioned this, the intent is to separate the truck fueling from the auto fueling. And so the 2 existing driveways will be used for auto customers up front. If you've been to this site recently, it's kind of a diagonal shape. The flow is not as good as it could be. And so I was actually there today. It's kind of a congested site. We need more dispensers is what it comes down to. So this will increase the number of dispensers and will meet the customer demand we're already seeing there. And then the truck fueling will be behind the store. We have 3 lanes for that. So you can kind of see on the slide there, there's 2 gray boxes in this eastern half, the right-hand side. One shows the underground tank, so that's a square that shows, those are the underground tanks. So those would be the fuel tank location for the commercial fueling for the trucks. And then the other square just a little bit to there, that's where we will have a canopy, and that's where the trucks will fuel. And so the plan would be that the second driveway, the one to the furthest to the right, that would be the entrance driveway. And then the driveway right there, the middle driveway, if you want to call it, that would be the exit. And so we would have a flow where trucks would come in one way and come out the other way. And I mention that because it's an important part of the design. Hopefully we get approval from you, and we'll be coming back to talk about directional signs and flow and some of the details that we work with. Another thing I want to point out is this site will be tiered. So the front is pretty close to what you see out there today. I mean, we've got some grading out there to do. Here's the grading plan. It's not as scary as it looks because we've got 10th-foot contours on there, so there's a lot more lines than actual. But the rear part, the commercial fueling, will be lower than the store. So we will actually have a ramp that handicapped drivers, if they are coming from the back, can come up the ramp. We'll have stairs coming into the back of the building. So I just want to kind of plant that for you visually, that right now, Generations Boulevard is the high point, and the site kind of slopes away from Colerain and then towards Walmart. So it kind of slopes away. And why that's important is that as you look at the right corner of this property, we're going to be building a retaining wall. So where the township is talking about having the firehouse to the east, we are proposing to have a retaining wall. And that will, so at the northern part, the top of that slide at the far right-hand side, that retaining wall would be about 2 or 3 feet. And then as you come down to the curved part, coming around that into the driveway, that retaining wall will be about 7 or 8 feet. The property will be lower to the east. So you will, if you're standing on the property line and you look back at the Speedway, you'd be looking up at the wall. So we've got about 8 feet of green space in that area, and then the wall, and then the top will be the pavement. You can see on this slide, it's a good example. This is where our detention will be. So that's the lowest point, so we would have our stormwater detention in that location. So I just want to point those out. and get right to the conditions, right? So we've got a recommendation for approval. We have no objection to the first condition. Approval of road development regulations. The second question, open space. I spoke to Jesse, the planner, before this meeting. We calculated our open space on the lot for what it's worth is about 36%. So we've got landscaping and unpaved areas of about 41,000 square feet. So almost more than an acre of the site will remain unpaved for what that's worth. Condition number 3, we will have to dedicate a small portion of right-of-way along the frontage. So as you come to the southern portion of the existing speedway, the right-of-way is not a full 60 feet. So we'll, at the furthest southern part along Colerain Avenue, we'll have to dedicate 8 feet, and then it kind of creates a triangle. I think the more important part is it really doesn't impact our setbacks along here. We're still going to have more than a 20-foot landscape strip between the future right-of-way / existing right-of-way and our edge of pavement. So we will be able to meet the township streetscape requirement along the frontage. And we will illustrate that on our final development plan. Hopefully we'll get that. So regarding the buffer, that's not something that we had planned on. The township shared that with us as we were going to the Regional Planning Commission. I explained to you for that purpose how our site's designed. So we do have a retaining wall there. We don't have any truck parking on this site. We're respectful of the fire department's concerns and want to work with the township on that, but I also think it's reasonable to understand our use. So we won't have truck parking. The trucks will only be there as long as it takes to queue up and get in line and fuel. This is not like a truck stop. This is not a Pilot or Flying J where you've got 60 or 80 parking spaces and trucks parking and coming in and having lounges and showers and laundry facilities. It's really for the trucks that are already in the vicinity. And the reason I'm explaining that is because what happens is it takes about 15 or 20 minutes for a truck to fuel up. And so if you've got a truck waiting to fuel all the time, which we hope we do, that's not really how it happens, you get about 3 or 4 in an hour per lane, right? So if we have trucks waiting all the time, we would have 9 to 12, 9 to 11 trucks an hour come through there. And I think if you put that in perspective, that's not a lot of trucks coming through there, at least in my opinion. So in our peak hours, we're probably getting somewhere between 9 and 10 trucks an hour. Not during peak hours, fewer than that. Having said that, we do want to work with the township on landscaping. That section that's referenced, 14.52B, refers to a fence. We don't think a fence would be appropriate there because we have a wall. We do have some grade separation. So we would like to work with the township on landscaping that's an appropriate standard, recognizing you may not build there too. So hopefully we can come to some understanding of a reasonable starting growth landscaping that's not too burdensome and do that. And hopefully in exchange for some support for number 5, which is we'd like some support for some signage. I spoke with Mrs. LeCount before the meeting, and the reason I gave you that information is to kind of show you what we're looking at. We've designed a ground sign based on PEI regulations, which would allow us to and materials, and so we'd like to work with the township on that, and I want to kind of put that out there for you to understand. Signage is important. We need to be able to advertise our gas prices, fuel prices. And so as long as the understanding is we're not going to be a channel letter sign like the Grumpy. We need to have a sign cabinet that's got fuel prices and size. That's important for us. And so we'd like to have that 15-foot, 150 square foot. And I know I'm getting a little ahead of myself on details, but I do think it's important. The second page of that handout that I gave you is a directional sign. We will be asking for directional signs, so slightly larger than what you're coding. And that's because we want two real important parts. One, trucks will be the audience that we're talking to, right? So we would like to have a sign that's 5 feet tall, and then that would say entrance only, exit only, because that's the second part of it. If they come in the entrance or they come out the exit, we've got a flow pattern that really doesn't work. So we're not trying to advertise with that sign, we're just trying to direct traffic, and we would intend to ask for a 15 square foot sign at each driveway. So it would say, the first one would say exit only, so you drive past that, and the second one would say entrance, and you can see that. And then the last handout that I gave you is a rendering. We've already done some upgrades to this project. This is not a typical Speedway store. You probably know this, but your planning staff does a pretty good job of working with us, of telling us what's going to be important. So we've already moved our dumpster and put it in a different location, put the seating where you see it now. And we put a door on that side, and we put a base on this store so that we've got some contrast in the building. And we put some spandrel glass on the store to so that the rear of the building has some articulation as well. And I think if you look at this and in scale, the signage at the corner is appropriate for what we're trying to achieve. I will point out, one flaw in our rendering. This does not represent the tiering. So, the rear portion of the site would be lower, and that's just not illustrated here. Kind of representing a flat plane, which is not here. So, where I'm going with that is I would ask that the commission recognize the size signs that we're looking at and the directional signage, either now or at the final development plan. That's something we'll have to, perhaps in exchange for us providing that landscaping, right? And then I'd say lastly, we have no problem with the number 6, with the exceptions that I mentioned. We do anticipate some issues related to signage as far as directional goes, and potentially the entrance sign. And kind of want to explain to the board that we may be asking for those approval of that final development plan if you can't address it now. So that completes my presentation. I will try and answer questions if you have. I should have said this before. Rusty Young's here with Speedway. He's the construction manager. I will say one other time, we've worked closely with Miller Valentine. We've looked at the street light locations and the sidewalk installation that's going on, and tried to coordinate our driveways with what's going on out there now, so that we are only installing it once and we're not conflict. So I think we've done a good job of melding our plan with what's actually happening. We did it with the service department and the county actually.
Mr. Gary, you have any questions?
It's more comment than a question, okay? I like the drawings. I like what you're doing for Speedway, don't get me wrong. But as far as question 4 and number 5 up there are concerned, my propensity obviously is to go with the staff recommendation when they come. So my advice to you is to talk to the staff. If you satisfy what staff is looking for, then frankly that'll be something that at least I could just speak for myself. But I will not be overly inclined to override their recommendation as far as signage and so forth is concerned. I understand your problems, but they're more attuned to what our community needs. That's the only comment I have.
Mr. Ferry?
I'm sort of in agreement with what Mr. Gehring's saying. I do have one question. What is the square footage on this proposed sign is 150 square feet of the actual sign?
Correct.
What is up there now? What size is what's there?
I'm not sure. I don't believe it's that size, but I can tell you. That is the sign there now. We think that the other location in adding the commercial fueling, we want to have 3 price panels. This Gwinnett too, and be able to demonstrate that. So we think a slightly larger sign is appropriate at that intersection.
This existing sign, if I could jump in here, is, I believe it's 7 feet tall, because that is in coordination with the Colerain Town Center outlot signage, which was capped at 7 feet tall. If you're familiar with that area, there is a large pylon sign for the entirety of that site, and then the outlots got their own signage, but it was left at that lower height. So I don't know the square footage on that, but that's why that is at 7 feet. Keep in mind, we're moving this property from that plan district into the Struble Road Development Company district. And the Rumpke signage for the headquarters building that has already been installed is closer to this scale. I think that was staff's intent with that recommendation, is to, not that we need to be in the same, channel letters with the same font or anything like that, but the idea that we're kind of in the same scale. Again, all things that we can discuss in specifics at the final development plan portion. Staff is not comfortable making a recommendation on any of the specifics that Mr. Wolker has presented this evening, because we have not sat down and done a thorough review of them and considered what they would look like on the site. I think it's a good information to have for the conversation tonight, but keep in mind that staff is not making a recommendation on what you've been handed this evening.
Under our current rulings, what would the signage be size-wise for the building they're proposing?
For PDI, it's 15 feet tall and 150 square feet of signage space, assuming that their property has at least 150 feet of frontage.
Okay. The building.
I'm sorry, it's half a square foot, you're right. So it'd be, if they have 300 square feet, or 300 linear feet of frontage, property frontage, they would get a 150 square foot sign. But the advantage of our planned districts is that we can discuss something like signage in either this meeting or the final development plan meeting, and then that becomes the zoning for that plan. So if we were not to discuss signage through this development process, those would be the standards that would apply for the site. Because signage is something that we've discussed in the Colerain Town Center development, as well as the Struble development. Now, there weren't specific standards, I believe, set on the Struble Development Company, but there was discussion of there being more modest sign regulations in there, or sign approvals in there. So that's kind of where we're at with this.
What is the frontage on this? Do we know what the?
I don't have that number on.
It's going to be way more than with the frontage on generations.
Okay.
We're more than 300 feet.
And that would count towards their signage allotment.
On the front page, it says 280 feet on Colerain Avenue.
That sounds about right.
So we're pretty close, yeah.
And then the frontage on
And then the frontage, so you'd be over the 300. So they'd be capped at 150 if we were going by the straight PDI sign standards written in the code.
Mr. Chairman, the reason we brought up signage is condition number 5 talks about signage, and I just wanted to, I'm not sure exactly what we're committing to with condition number 5. I don't know that we have an objection to it. I thought it would appropriate to show you where we were going based on, the PDI standards, 15 and 150, and, get some feedback. Does this comply with, so if I bring this sign back to you, does this comply with number 5?
I would be pretty close.
With
It would be
the style of
close.
the office
Yeah.
building?
And my feedback says that if they say it does, then you can hear me say it does.
And staff hasn't yet reviewed, we're not going to review
Understand.
this on,
Now,
now. Thank you.
In my mind, number 5 is just simply stating you have to get it all worked out before the final development plan gets presented to us.
Right.
My job is to push here, so I'm going to push. So is that primarily material related then? So is that reference to the style of the Rumpke office building to the north relates to having masonry on the base and surroundings?
I think staff is talking more about overall scale. is really the intent there. But having this condition in there leaves it open for us to recognize that this district is handled a little differently than a straight or normal PDI standards, because there is some intent going on there with the overall Rumpke development. So the idea is that there's more of a cohesive discussion about signage with respect to the entirety of that 50 acres rather than just one individual property owner and their want for as big a sign as they can possibly get.
Signs, I think, are always an issue. Everybody, bigger is better, as far as so,
Staff just wants to
Yeah.
essentially put out there that this is something that we do need to discuss. We are looking for
Yep.
something a little more modest, based on the surrounding development and the anticipated future development. And we just don't want to get to the FDP and the applicant be shocked that we are not wanting a 15-foot sign. That's really the intent of that condition there, is kind of putting it out there for further discussion in the FDP.
This use is a little bit unique in that we have sign prices that we need to display, and then we've got, the name of the business as well. And so we're kind of obligated to have those prices. And then the height is driven to a large extent to the customer that we're now attracting. It's different than what we have here in that we are now looking at truck customers. And so a 7-foot height sign versus 15 does have a difference in the high visibility and the view line of the truck. So I felt it important to at least let you be aware of where we're headed, and I think this discussion helps us understand a little bit more what you're trying to accomplish.
My advice would be that you work with staff, and whatever they bring to us, we most probably will accept. So you have some time, you can work with them. That would be my suggestion. Mrs. Smith?
Yes, I just want to go back over the part where you talked about noise and pollution. How will that be dealt with?
Same as we do today. I mean, we would comply with any of the township's regulations. So if the township determines that we have a noise issue, we will abate that. We are not a noisy operation.
Well, you said trucks are going to stop in, correct?
Trucks will stop there, right?
And they'll be polluting, correct?
About as much as Rumpke does.
Well, yeah, that is.
We will follow the state's requirements related to pollution and the township's regulations as well. So, Speedway is an environmental company, believe it or not, and they have a strong responsibility to make sure that they're following regulations.
Okay, I saw somewhere in our writings where there were homes nearby. I don't know where they are, but across the street, next door side of it, or?
I'm not aware of any homes in the vicinity. There may be a home across the street on Rayanne, and then going up, but I think that's even a business now. So
There's not a home going down Struble almost to Generation Drive?
not anywhere near our proposed development.
No,
I think there's one there.
Rumpke's pretty much cleaned it out.
That's it, thank you.
Mr. Gordy?
First of all, I hope your first illustration on your top of your packet isn't an omen of your gas prices in the future. $8.88 and 9 cents.
Think of it this way, that allows us to also make it a 1, so.
The building, the new proposed building would be pretty much in the same site as the current one, or is it going to move back to the sides, or what?
It's very similar. So if you look at the current layout, it's kind of at an angle. It's generally in the same location. And the best way, that shows it perfectly. The best way to compare this is the two driveways that you see on that are almost in the same location. The southern driveway shifts a little bit, and then when you look at the plan, you'll see that our building is pretty much in the same line. So it's pushed back slightly. This store will be bigger. So the current store, I believe, is about 2,800 square feet, and we're at 4,600. So that allows us to have better food service and better coffee, drinks, and waters and the whole thing.
When you say truck traffic, can you describe or define what you're trying to attract there? Semis or smaller
Yeah, so-
trucks or what?
I think the best way to answer that is we're trying to attract the trucks that are currently on the street, right? So we don't have a high-rise sign that's trying to get trucks off of 275. It's basically going to be local trucks that are familiar with this area. So that would be a combination of what I call box trucks, but it would be 18-wheelers, semis that are in the vicinity. I just don't see a truck leaving 275 and saying, I'm going to go here to make a big fuel up. If they're coming off, if they're on 27, then this is a very convenient operation. And frankly, we hope that the other development that's coming in the future would utilize this as well. That this would be a morning and an evening stop for them. I don't think the Rumpke trucks use that. They've got their own fueling facilities, but a lot of landscape trucks would also be.
That was my next question. Have you worked anything out with Rumpke to be the fueling site for all of their trucks?
Not to my knowledge. Speedway is very innovative, so if that's an opportunity, I'm sure they'll look into it, but not to my knowledge.
Okay.
And I think they use more of an LG sometimes, but I don't know. I don't know their fueling system.
Okay, that's all I have.
Okay, do we need to open the public hearing portion of this? The chair would entertain a motion to open the public hearing part.
So moved.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded that we open the public hearing part of this. Do we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Ferry?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Gehring?
Yes.
Mr. Grody?
Yes.
Mr. Westfall?
Aye. Okay. Where's my paper? Oh, here it is. Mr. Wosher has already talked. Rusty Young, do you want to talk?
No, I'm good.
Okay. Would anybody else like to address the commission? None so appearing, the chair would entertain a motion to close the public address part of the hearing.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we close the public address system of this. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Ferry?
Yes.
Mr. Grody?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Gehring?
Yes.
Mr. Westfall?
Aye. Okay, staff, the commissioners, do you have anything you would like to bring up before we call for a vote? None so appearing,
Tom, I was trying to get to my paper here.
okay.
Ms. LeCount, on item number 4, if we make let me put it this way, if we make a motion to approve what's before us this evening in the exact way that it's written here with the 6 conditions, that's still going to leave you room to work with the applicant and so forth to get the final development plan
Yes, sir.
in order.
Yes, sir.
It's not locking you into specifics and perhaps not locking them into some specifics.
I don't believe so. I think we can take a quick look at 1452B and see that that is backed up far enough to give us a couple of options. 52B is planting requirements for buffer yards, so we're only talking about the planting requirements, and that's really what staff is looking for. I'm not necessarily looking for any more space dedicated or moving that pavement. We're looking to just get that landscape buffer started, so that's kind of what we're aiming for.
Okay.
I have another comment. I think this is for the staff. You stated there were going to be like 7 different businesses within this project.
in the industrial development. that's
Correct.
the
What
proposal.
are they, or do you know at this time?
I don't know at this time. They're all future proposed.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have a motion on the floor yet or not?
You do not.
We do not.
Okay, thank you.
I'll make a motion that we approve case ZA 8-1988 / ZA 2016-09, which is a major amendment to a preliminary development plan at 10270 Colerain Avenue / Speedway, and that we approve it as is presented to us with the 6 conditions as were shared with us by staff this evening.
Thank you. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
It's been moved and seconded that we accept case number ZA 8-1988 / ZA 2016-09. Do we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Gehring?
Yes.
Mrs. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Grody?
Yes.
Mr. Faring?
Yes.
Mr. Westfall?
Aye, motion carried. Go, guys. Next on the agenda is our informal concept review. I don't think we have any.
We do not,
Old business is next. Do we have any old business?
not that I'm aware of.
New business, do we have any new business?
No, sir.
Administration,
I believe that Marty handed out the meeting schedule for 2019. We will get that posted. That has been approved by the Board of Trustees. So we will get that up online, take a look at it, let you know if we have any issues. As usual, we've adjusted, I believe it, nope, sorry, not talking to BZA, talking to zoning commission. Never mind. All your meetings are on the regularly scheduled. That's all.
are there any announcements?
Mr. Chairman, are we, in light of the meeting schedule, are we maintaining the same time?
That's up to you folks.
My recommendation is yes.
Janice says,
Thumbs up.
we can discuss that now, we can discuss it next month, we can discuss it in January.
Okay, just asking.
Yeah, we can change it, it's up to us.
So, and that's something that we can do with proper notice before the meetings. And we can, because the schedule was approved by the Board of Trustees, I can always take it back to them and ask for modification of that. I don't have a problem doing that. At this point, we don't have anything lined up for the January agenda.
Okay,
So our recommendation is going to be that when we open that February meeting, we're going to have new members sworn in.
right,
And then you will need to
we need to elect a chairman and vice chairman.
elect chairman, vice chair, and secretary, I believe.
Secretary.
Do you have a secretary?
BZA.
I'm sorry, you don't have a secretary?
You're as confused
I'm
as I
sorry.
am.
I have BZA tomorrow night, so it's fine.
Okay. The only announcement I would like to make, I hope that all the people in this room and all the people who are watching have a wonderful holiday season, and everything turns out the way they would like it to in the coming year.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Our next meeting is supposed to be January 15th. We were just told we don't have a case yet. Says the 15th on here.
Yeah, we changed it. Sorry.
The chair would entertain a motion for adjournment.
I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
Thank you. All in favor, say aye.
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 All opposed? Any opposed? Motion